Okay, and so this is the first section language. Okay, and so Levelt, think of it as levels because Levelt was the person that thought that there were distinct levels in a mental lexicon, and so it could be broken up into things like concepts, words, and sounds. Okay, so what is a homonym? Okay, so a homonym is something that has the same spelling but has a different meaning. And so same spelling, different meaning. Think of how nymph, like the little fairy and nymphomaniac, sound the same, but they have a different meaning. And some examples of homonyms are left and bank, because left can mean like to the right or the left, but left can also mean like I left my teddy bear there. Okay, so homonym is same spelling, different meaning. Homophones is what it sounds like. It is the same sound, different meaning. Okay, and so what part of the brain supports different categorically related clusters? So that's going to be the temporal lobe. And what is another word for the prototype effect? That is the perceptual magnet. Okay, and who was Noam Chomsky? Okay, Noam Chomsky, you can think of him as like Pac-Man, and he's chomping, 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 and he wants to acquire all the language. And so Noam Chomsky had the theory of an LAD, which is that children are all born with this universal language acquiring device. So basically, they're all able to chomp down on this language, but it was never discovered. Okay, and so now where is Broca's region? So Broca's region is anterior to the premotor, and that makes sense because that means it's in front of the premotor. And you can think about that because Broca starts with a B, so it's early in the alphabet. And also in Broca's aphasia, they have trouble actually producing the speech, and so it would make sense that if you had Broca's aphasia, which would mean you had a lesion in Broca's area, you had a lesion by the premotor area, and so you have an issue with producing actual speech because of your motor deficit. And Broca's area is also in the frontal lobe, and so Broca's area, it starts with a B, so it's early in the alphabet, and so it's in the frontal lobe, right in front of the premotor cortex, which has to do with the patient's inability to produce speech. And also, just for the actual region, it's the left posterior inferior frontal cortex, so that's like the L-PIC, left posterior inferior frontal cortex. So that's L-PIC-C, left posterior inferior frontal cortex. Okay, and where is Wernicke's? Okay, and so Wernicke's is in the superior temporal lobe, and this makes sense because it's posterior to A1, and that makes sense because if you basically in Wernicke's you have a hard time understanding what people are saying, and so that would go through your auditory cortex. And so if you had a lesion right next to your auditory cortex, you probably wouldn't be able to comprehend, which would in turn lead to Wernicke's syndrome, where you're just babbling on incoherently. You can form the speech fine because your motor system is okay, but you don't know what you're saying, you don't know what you want to say. It's just a mess in that sense. And also it is in the superior temporal lobe, as I said before. Okay, and so that's like the top of the time. Superior temporal lobe, so think of like the W as a little crown, and it's in the superior temporal lobe. So Wernicke's superior temporal lobe behind the A1. Okay, and Broca's aphasia, already kind of went through this. In Broca's aphasia, you know exactly what you want to say, but you don't have the motor ability to actually say it, and so that's called non-fluent aphasia. And in Wernicke's area, you don't know what you want to say, but your motor area is fine, and so you can fluidly speak and produce sounds, but they're not going to make any sense. And so for Wernicke's, the main issue is comprehension. Okay, so where is the mental lexicon? Okay, so you know that the representations of words are in the temporal lobe, but where exactly in the temporal lobe? So if you look at mental lexicon, its abbreviations are ML, and a lowercase l looks like an I, and so think of MI or IM, and then that's going to tell you that it's inferior and medial temporal lobe. So within the temporal lobe, we already know words are represented in. We know that the mental lexicon is in the IM realm, which is inferior and medial temporal lobe. Okay, and the interpreter function of the brain is on the left side, and so basically what's going to happen is if you pick out an object with your right hand, these are in split brain patients, then your left brain isn't going to have information about what exactly that is, but because the left side is stereotypically known as being more creative, your left brain is going to be able to integrate, or it's going to be able to integrate this object that you picked up with your right hand into kind of like what your left brain has been experiencing. Or no, that's if you pick up the item with your right hemisphere. So if the right hemisphere detects an object, the left hemisphere is going to be able to integrate that object kind of into the context and what it's been absorbed or what it's been absorbing so far. And another thing to know is this was discovered by Gazzaniga, and you can remember this because if you go to Gaza in Africa, you're going to need an interpreter. And so yeah, Gazzaniga discovered the interpreter function, and if you go to Africa, you need an interpreter. And so the interpreter that Gazzaniga discovered was the left lobe. Okay, and so think about this: if you're holding something in either your left or your right hand, and you're a split brain patient, on which side are you going to be able to? In which hand are you going to be able to actually form the words to say what this object is? And so basically the right hemisphere is the takeaway that the right hemisphere only has rudimentary speech production, so it can't produce speech very well. And so if you have it in your left hand, that's going to go to your right hemisphere, and you're not going to be able to vocalize it. But if you have it in your left hand, or if you have it in your, sorry, vice versa, if you have it in your right hand, that's going to go to your left hemisphere, and you're going to be able to verbalize exactly what it is because that side of your brain has like the speech production functions. But if it is in your left hand, it's going to go to your right hemisphere, and you're not going to be able to say exactly what that is because the right hemisphere doesn't really have a good ability to form speech and articulate things. Okay, and so what exactly is this right hemisphere good for? Well, aprosodia. So what is aprosodia? So aprosodia, think about a soda because it's aprosodia, and then all the little bubbles are apparating out. And so like there's no more fizz, there's no more emotional excitement to this soda anymore. And so basically aprosodia is going to be a symptom of when you get a lesion to a particular part of your brain, and it's going to manifest itself by you not having very much emotional coloring in your speech. And so basically what you can take away from this is the left side of your brain produces the actual sounds, but the right side of your brain adds the emotional coloring to it. So the way that you get this aprosodia is if you have a lesion to the right side of your brain in the temporal or frontal lobe. And we've just been talking about the temporal and frontal lobe so far. And so we just talked about the temporal and frontal lobe so far, but mostly on the left side. But just on the right side of your brain in the temporal frontal lobe, what that does for speech is adds emotional coloring, and that's called aprosodia when that goes away. Okay, and the last thing in language is the N400 ERP, and what that is, it is a contextual signal. So that's the main point. N400 is a contextual signal, and it's a negative going signal that happens 400 milliseconds after a context incongruent thing. So like if you say something weird, like I just threw a ball for my mirror, the N400 is going to happen 400 milliseconds after the mirror because that doesn't make sense in context. And the kind of amplitude or the severeness of this signal is going to track kind of how incongruent this thing is that you heard. And so N400 is an event-related potential that has to do with context incongruency in hearing stuff. Okay, so now we're getting into working memory. And so the first thing for working memory is Alan Badley. And Alan Badley, you can think about his name, it's spelled Baddley. And so it's like the B and the D and the D are kind of together. And so that's three different little slots. And so Alan Badley was the one that thought that there were three different buffers of working memory. And then there was one controller that allocated attention to different buffers. And so then this controller could either focus on like one of the three buffers and manipulate things within that buffer. And then these little buffers, like they weren't represented the same way that long-term memory was, but they were linked to long-term memory. Okay, so what were the three working memory buffers that Badley proposed? So remember, Badley, B-A-D-D, that's three different little buffers. Okay, so the three buffers that he proposed, you can think of it as thinking, hearing, seeing. And so the thinking would be episodic, the hearing would be phonological, and the seeing would be visuospatial. So thinking, hearing, seeing, episodic, phonological, visuospatial, and then that's Badley. And so another thing to know about Badley is that he only thought that there was one visuospatial notepad. Okay, and so who thought that working memory was distant from LTM? And so again, that's Badley, because the buffers were in a different realm than the long-term memory was in the brain. And also another thing to know about Badley is that he thought that these little buffers each had a store function and a rehearsal function within them. So the buffers, there was three of them, and they each were connected to long-term memory, but they weren't in the same representation, and they both had a store function and a rehearsal function. So that's the little arrows that loop back on them. Okay, and Nelson Cowan. Okay, so you can think of Cowan or Cohen kind of like a co-op, and so it's like all these little kids playing together. And you can think of like the big pen with all the little kids, and all the little kids are different memories, and the big pen is long-term memory. And so Nelson Cohen basically thought that all memory representation was the same, just if it was working memory, it would just be the spotlight was shining on it, and that was in particular what you were looking at, but it was all kind of represented in the same little pen or co-op. So Nelson Cohen, he had the little co-op, everything is represented the same spotlight model for working memory. And also Cohen thought that there could be about 4 items in working memory at any one time. Okay, and so what are the phases of working memory? They are encoding, and then a delay, and then a response, and the delay part's really important. And so then now we're going to get into some tasks. And so first one is delayed response task. And so what is that? And so that is basically you show him like stimulus, he sees where the stimulus is, and he has to remember where that is until he gets another like cue or response. And so basically you're disassociating the encoding, the delay, and response. And the point of all these working memory tests is to try to get at the different phases of how are encoding, delaying, and responding different. Okay, and so the next test is the delay match to sample test. And so it's the delay test, and then within this delay you have to match to sample test. And so what you do here is you see a set of stimuli, and then you have a delay, and you have to hold that in your memory, and then they're going to show you one stimuli, and you have to tell them if you saw that before or not. And so it's a match. So delay match to stimulus test. And that also disassociates the phases, and this is mostly because you don't know like what response they're going to ask you for. And so if you see like a blue, a purple, and a green flower, you have to remember the blue, the purple, and the green, because you don't know if they're going to ask you about the blue, the purple, or the green. You don't know like that they're going to specifically ask you about the blue. And so this helps dissociate encoding, delay, and response. Okay, and the end back test basically just shows how far back working memory can go. And the point of the end back test is so that you can do dynamic updating, and you can kind of look at that through a test. Okay, so C.F. Jacobson, he's a big player in working memory. And you can think of him as Mr. Jacobs, your first and second grade teacher. So C.F. Jacobson, and basically what he discovered was that the lateral prefrontal cortex had a delay activation for these little response tasks. And so basically he was the one that realized that the prefrontal cortex, or the PFC, that mysterious structure, is the one that's going to have this activation during the delay. And you can remember this because I have a lot of pictures of me and Mr. J, and he has like his head specifically on like the place where my lateral prefrontal cortex would be, and lateral means on the outside, so kind of on the outside of your head, and then your prefrontal cortex is like kind of in front, just above your forehead. And there's a lot of pictures of his head there because he's so tall, and just like his hand resting on the lateral prefrontal cortex. And basically he just showed that this is where the there's gonna be some activation during the delay, and so this is working memory. And so yeah, he showed the delay activation in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. And yeah, just remember Jacobson shows activation of neurons during the delay in the DLPFC. Okay, and so now where else is there kind of delayed activation in these working memory tasks? Okay, so obviously the DLPFC, because you remember Jacobson, that's what he discovered, that's a piece of the brain where there's some activation in this delay. And then there's also some of this activation in the premotor cortex, and you can think about this because that is kind of just behind the dorsolateral premotor cortex, or prefrontal cortex. And so it's that little PFC, and you go a little bit back, and it's the premotor cortex, and that seems kind of weird, but I guess makes sense because in the delay, when you're thinking about your response, it's probably going to activate the premotor cortex because you're preparing to make a move, you're preparing to do some sort of action. And then also in the temporal and parietal lobes, and the temporal is kind of like that little swing around lobe on the bottom, and the parietal lobe is the one on top. And so it's basically all this stuff on top is where this delay activation is going to happen. And so it's a DLPFC, premotor cortex right behind that, parietal lobe, kind of that whole top region, and the temporal lobe, where we've kind of been discussing everything is there already. Okay, and so what can decrease, or what can increase delay period activation? So what can happen that could make this activation that one experiences in the delay period even more intense? And so this could be two things. And so it could either be more working memory load, and so it's going to be more activated if you're trying to remember just a pink and an orange flower, versus if you're trying to remember a pink, orange, red flower, tulip, rose, it's going to be way more active during the delay period with all of those flowers because there's a more working memory capacity. And also, it's kind of like that correlating thing that we saw earlier, that if you get that trial correct, basically a good predictor if you're going to get that trial correct is if the delay period had spiked activation. And so it's both, you can get more delay period activation with a high working memory load, and also if you are going to get it correct, because this delay period is basically like reinforcing it seems like. And so another thing to know about this delay period is that I didn't mention this earlier, but another place where you can get activation in this delay period is the IPS, which is the intraparietal sulcus, and it's kind of the folds in between your parietal lobe and occipital lobe. It's like that little deviation there, and that's called the IPS. And so it's intraparietal sulcus because it's in the middle of the parietal lobe, and it's like a sulcus or like a deviation, and there's going to be some delay here. And that makes sense because it's kind of in between like the occipital and the A1. And so maybe like, I know this isn't correct, but maybe you would see a stimulus, it would go to your occipital lobe, and then your intraparietal sulcus would be kind of activated in this delay, and then it would make its way to the and then it would make its way towards like the other regions. And so kind of like the IPS is another good way, or is another good place to look at delay activation with working memory. Okay, and so now we're going to look at, there's different types of working memory that people think they found. And so spatial working memory is going to be its own category. And so spatial working memory is going to have a specific place where delay activation occurs. And so that's going to be the dorsal PFC. And so that basically just means the top of the PFC, and so that's just like right above your forehead. And so it's not the dorsolateral PFC where the Jacobson thing is, where Mr. Jacobs' hand always was in all those pictures, but it is just the dorsal PFC, and that's where spatial working memory is. And so just like think of like the very top of your head, that's spatial working memory. Like you can just reach right in there spatially and pick out your working memory. So dorsal PFC and the parietal cortex is where and the parietal cortex, so it's gonna be like right above your forehead, plus going back in the parietal cortex a little bit, and that's called your memory field. You can just kind of reach in and grab your working memory out from there, but just the spatial working memory. And then, as we know, working memory objects, you remember that diagram that in the bottom of the brain on the temporal lobe, there's like all those little blips, and a different kind of little blob represents a different group of vocab. And so, yeah, and so basically working memory for objects is going to be in temporal, but we already kind of knew that. And then if you're looking at specific characteristics of these things, kind of like, if like you're looking at only like blue tools or something, or like sharp objects, then it's going to be in the ventral temporal. And so just objects are in the temporal cortex, which is already on the lower part of the brain. But then if you're looking at super specific attributes of these objects, it's going to be in the ventral temporal, which is even farther down. Okay, and then just a little review. Who thought that there was only one visuospatial sketch pad? And that was Badley. Okay, and so then just to review, where's object working memory and where's spatial working memory? Object working memory is in the temporal, kind of in the down part, remember this diagram, and spatial working memory is in the dorsal parietal frontal cortex business. It's kind of like on the upper. And so spatial is on the upper because you can just reach into that space and grab your memories, but then objects are going to be on the bottom because remember those diagrams. And then the more specific you get, kind of it looks like the more ventral you get with the more weird specifics. Okay, and then working memory is co-activated with what? And this is a quick one. Okay, so working memory is usually co-activated with PFC and like higher sensory regulation. So kind of like the PFC is mysterious, and also like higher cognitive functions are happening with working memory because you're manipulating things. Okay, and so now there is a couple more theories. And so there's two more theories that we can think of for working memory, past like the Badley, Nelson, and Badley and like the Cohen business. There's two other theories that are at the end. And so the first one is the content-based mode of working memory. And basically what this is the content-based mode. And you can think of Patricia Torvalds wearing a yarmulke married to Yosh. And so because the person that discovered this was Patrick Goldman Rakic. And so Patricia is Patrick, Goldman is the yarmulke, and Rakic is Yosh. And so Patricia wearing a yarmulke married to Yosh, talking about content. Okay. And so basically this content-based model is just saying that the PFC holds representations based on, and like where you hold them, it's based on what kind of content there are. And so basically she's just saying that the dorsal, which would be the top, is spatial, which we already knew, and then ventral would be objects, which we already knew. But what's unique about hers is that she's saying that it's kind of an extension of the visual pathway. And so kind of like what I said about the intraparietal sulcus, like it would go into your brain and then it would kind of like extend into your brain. So she's thinking of working memory as an extension of the visual process or visual pathway. So it's like the natural next step. Like your brain receives these light signals, turns them into action potential, sends them to your occipital lobe, and then kind of the natural step forward, Patricia says, is basically to put them in working memory and either like work with them in dorsal or spatial, or dorsal, which would be the spatial one, and ventral, which would be the object ones. And then she also thinks working memory is separate from long-term memory, because long-term memory is stored somewhere else, but she thinks that these working memory things are just simply on the top and the bottom of the brain, and they're sorted by content, because spatial is going to go to the bottom, or spatial is going to go to the top, object's going to go to the bottom. And then the second one is process-specific model. And so basically what this is it just says ventral is simple maintenance, and so that's kind of like the bottom. Like you can think about this because like process-specific is, it's like you're starting a process from the bottom up, and so the ventral is just going to be simple maintenance, and then as you get to the dorsal PFC, it's going to turn into like manipulation and higher level functions and things like that. And so it's going to get more complicated the higher up you go. And this was discovered by Mt3 P1. And you can remember that because Petri dish, growing bacteria in a Petri dish is, you can imagine the little bacteria is crawling up from the bottom of the Petri dish, which would be the ventral, and then at the top they form colonies and get more complicated. So process-specific model was Petri dish, and it's basically saying from bottom to top it gets more complicated, and then content-based mode working memory is just saying that that's Patricia Goldman Rakic, and she's just saying that working memory is a natural extension of the visual pathway.